In the beginning, before clocks ticked, before oceans learned how to roar, before mountains carried snow like crowns, before humanity breathed its first borrowed breath, God spoke, not with hesitation, not with fear, not with uncertainty. He spoke light into darkness, hope into emptiness, purpose into dust. And ever since then, the history of mankind has been the story of a God who keeps speaking promises into broken places, promises to wanderers, promises to doubters, promises to grieving mothers, to chained prisoners, to tired fathers, to prodigal children, to nations collapsing beneath the weight of their own pride. Promises, not weak wishes, not motivational slogans stitched onto pillows, but divine declarations from the mouth of eternity itself. Because when God promises, heaven leans forward, time obeys, history rearranges itself, and mankind, fragile mankind, keeps surviving on the echoes of what God said. He promised Noah that storms would not have the final word. So after rain drowned the earth, a rainbow stood in the sky, like heaven's signature across the clouds. He promised Abraham a nation from an old man's body, stars from barren silence, descendants too many to count. And Abraham waited, years folded into decades. His beard grew gray with expectation. Sarah laughed at impossibility. The womb stayed closed. The promise looked foolish. But God has never been intimidated by human timelines, because while man counts minutes, God counts fulfillment. And Isaac arrived, not merely as a child, but as evidence that divine promises survive human doubt. God promised Moses that chains would break. Imagine standing before the Red Sea, with an army behind you, and water in front of you. No escape route, no strategy, no diplomacy, just fear breathing down your neck. Yet God said, tell the people to move forward. Forward? Into water? Because sometimes God's promises require movement. Before miracles, and the sea opened, walls of water stood at attention, while former slaves walked through, on dry ground. Do you understand what that means? It means oppression is never permanent. When God has spoken freedom, it means Pharaoh's chariots cannot outrun divine intention. It means God does not merely rescue people. He rewrites destinies, and mankind keeps forgetting what God keeps proving. He promised Joshua victory, though Jericho looked untouchable. No battering ram, no advanced weaponry, just obedience. March around the walls, blow the trumpets. Trust me, because God specializes in making impossible instructions produce undeniable outcomes. The walls fell, not because Israel was powerful, but because God's word is heavier than stone. He promised David that a shepherd boy could stand before giants. And isn't that still our struggle today? Giants. Giants of poverty, giants of fear, giants of addiction, giants of depression, giants of corruption, giants whispering, "You are too small, too weak, too late." But David understood something mankind forgets. A promise from God is greater than the size of opposition. So while Goliath trusted armor, David trusted the voice of God. One stone, one swing, one impossible victory. Because God has always loved using small things to embarrass impossible odds. He promised Solomon wisdom, promised Elijah fire, promised Elisha double portions, promised Hannah's son, promised Ruth restoration, promised Esther courage for a dangerous hour. And over again, God proved that he is not a man, that he should lie. Still mankind doubted, because pain has a way of making promises sound distant. Israel doubted in the wilderness. They saw manna fall from heaven, yet still worried about tomorrow. And before we judge them too quickly, look at us. We panic over bills, while breathing lungs we did not create. We question tomorrow, while standing inside miracles. We call ordinary the heartbeat, the sunrise, not weak bones. And the beautiful thing about God, Peter denied, because one of God's greatest promises is mercy, not merely a teacher. The lame walked, demons trembled, darkness loses authority. Jesus promised the weary rest, promised the hungry living bread, promised the thirsty living water, promised the broken healing. And mankind did what mankind often does. nails through innocent hands, a crown of thorns pressed into holiness, blood dripping down wood, while mockers laughed beneath the cross. It looked like failure, but God's promises often look weakest right before fulfillment, because 3 days later, death discovered it could not hold the author of life. The stone rolled away, and resurrection became heaven's announcement that no grave is final. When God has spoken, that is the promise, that sin is not stronger than grace, that darkness is not stronger than light, that hatred is not stronger than love, that death itself must bow before God. And still today, God keeps promising. He promises peace that surpasses understanding. Not peace because life is easy, but peace despite the storm. Peace while doctors wait on test results. Peace while tears soak pillows at midnight. Peace while the world shakes beneath uncertainty. A peace the world cannot manufacture because it comes from the presence of God. He promises strength to the weary, and maybe that promise matters now more than ever, because mankind is tired of violence, tired of pretending, tired of carrying silent battles behind smiling faces. Social media taught us how to filter pain without healing it. We know how to look alive while dying quietly inside. But God promised, "My strength is made perfect in weakness," meaning your breaking point does not scare him. Your exhaustion does not disqualify you. God is not searching for flawless people. He is searching for willing hearts. He promises provision, not always luxury, not always excess, but daily bread. Enough grace for today, enough mercy for this morning, enough strength for this battle. The Israelites collected manna, one day at a time, because God wanted them to learn dependence. And perhaps mankind's greatest struggle is dependence. We want control, we want certainty, we want guarantees. But faith means trusting that God can see farther than we can. He promised protection, not a life free from trouble, but a presence stronger than trouble itself. Daniel still entered the lion's den. The Hebrew boys still faced the fire. Paul still suffered shipwrecks and prisons. Yet none of those trials could cancel what God spoke over them. Because promises are not proven by the absence of difficulty. They are proven by God's faithfulness in the middle of it. And hear this carefully. God never promised mankind a painless existence, but He did promise He would never leave us. That matters, because loneliness is one of humanity's deepest fears. To suffer unseen, to break unheard, to cry unanswered. Yet God says, "I am with you always, always." In hospital rooms, in funeral processions, in unemployment lines, in silent apartments, in seasons where prayers feel unanswered, always. And maybe somebody listening needs that reminder tonight. Maybe you've prayed for years and heaven felt quiet. Maybe disappointment has made your faith fragile. Maybe life did not become what you imagined. But delay is not denial. The same God who fulfilled promises for Abraham, for Moses, for Ruth, for David, for Mary, is still writing stories today. God promises purpose, meaning you were not created accidentally. Your existence is intentional, every fingerprint unique, every soul carrying eternal significance. Mankind spends billions searching for meaning in money, fame, pleasure, applause. Yet purpose has never been found in possessions, because nothing temporary can satisfy an eternal soul. God promises transformation. The addict can heal, the hateful can love, the fearful can become courageous, the broken can become whole. Not because mankind is naturally good, but because grace changes people. Look at Saul becoming Paul, a persecutor becoming a preacher. That is what God does. He rewrites identities. And perhaps the greatest promise of all is this: God promises eternity, a day where pain expires, where tears lose language, where injustice is finally answered, where death dies forever. Can you imagine that? No more funerals, no more cancer, no more war, no more hunger, no more children crying from empty stomachs, no more hearts breaking from betrayal. Just fullness, just peace, just God. The promise of heaven is not escapism, it is hope. Because mankind was created for more than dust and deadlines. We were created for eternity, and until that day comes, we live between promise and fulfillment. That space called faith. Faith when prayers seem delayed. Faith when the diagnosis hurts. Faith when nations shake. Faith when relationships collapse. Faith when tears become language. Faith is believing that God remains faithful, even when circumstances become confusing. And if history teaches mankind anything, it is this: empires rise and fall, economies collapse, kings die, trends fade, technology changes, but the promises of God remain, still standing after centuries, still healing hearts, still changing lives, still calling mankind back home. So today, whether you are rich or poor, certain or confused, strong or exhausted, remember this: God has not forgotten humanity. The creator of galaxies still sees individuals, still hears prayers whispered through tears, still notices silent suffering, still loves relentlessly. And perhaps that is the most breathtaking promise of all, that despite mankind's failures, despite wars and hatred, despite rebellion and pride, God still chooses love, still chooses mercy, still chooses us. So lift your head, weary soul. The story is not over. The same God who parted seas, raised the dead, healed the broken, and rolled stones away, is still moving, still speaking, still promising. And every promise of God carries this truth: darkness never wins forever. Because when God speaks, hope rises. When God speaks, chains break. When God speaks, dead things breathe again. And when God speaks over mankind, the final word will never be despair. It will be redemption.